All right, joining me is Alan Austin, Managing Director of Litecoin Foundation, who is obviously behind the digital asset Litecoin, which currently has a market cap of about $9 billion. dollars. And it actually recently processed its 300 millionth transaction. But Litecoin Foundation, they're a nonprofit organization. Their mission is to promote the adoption, awareness, and development of Litecoin and its ecosystem. And just given the recent news flow around a potential spot Litecoin ETF, I thought Alan would be the perfect guest to help educate people around exactly what Litecoin is. And so, Alan, it's a pleasure to connect. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Nate. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right, so start by just telling us a little bit more about Litecoin Foundation itself and your specific role there.
Sure. So as you mentioned, the foundation promotes and adopts awareness, development of Litecoin and its general ecosystem. The foundation, some of the things we do include like furthering research and development, education, community support, partnerships, and anything else related to privacy and everything else we can do related to really promoting Litecoin adoption and what for the benefit of society, for the benefit of the people. And I'm managing director of Litecoin Foundation. Yes.
All right, so let's start on the education piece. It's a thread I run through this particular podcast. And I guess the way that I would start here is just for the novice. And remember, I do have a lot of TradFi listeners. So for the novice, explain what Litecoin is.
Sure. So in the simplest terms, Litecoin is digital money. It's a peer-to-peer cryptocurrency, meaning there's no you can transact with somebody else directly without anybody in between, or two computers can work with each other without a central server. This was created in 2011, and it was created in a fairly launched way, meaning there was no coins that were pre-mined or given to the founder beforehand or before anyone else had an opportunity to participate in the network. And we could talk about this more later if we want, but this is very important in terms of being fairly launched and so that everybody has an equal opportunity to join and participate. Litecoin, in many ways, kind of shares the same underlying principles as Bitcoin. One of them that being just like Bitcoin, Litecoin is decentralized. So the Litecoin network is open source. It's designed as public. That means that no party, even the Litecoin Foundation, owns or controls Litecoin or the Litecoin network. So in other words, everyone can take part. The Litecoin blockchain is public and transparent, and it's available for everyone. As mentioned, Litecoin in its simplest terms is digital money. And it's digital money because it shares some of the most important things when it comes to being really good money. And some of those attributes include Litecoin security. Litecoin is highly liquid. It's easily accessible across almost any exchange. There's a limited supply, which is important to money. There's also a privacy layer, which we can touch on in a bit, which is very important to sound money. And I think combined, all these things provide a really good, strong use case for Litecoin B money to be used as a payments option as well as a store of value.
You mentioned some of the similarities to Bitcoin, and I know particularly just in terms of the code base itself, but what would you point to as some key differences between Litecoin and Bitcoin?
Sure. So as mentioned, there's a lot of similarities, but there are some subtle differences. And I would say even one or two things that are maybe not so subtle, but every bit as very important. So for one, where Bitcoin has a maximum supply of 21 million coins, Litecoin has a maximum supply of 4 times that amount, which is 84 million coins. And because of this, Litecoin also has faster block times, meaning Litecoin's confirmation times are 4 times as fast on average as Bitcoin's. Litecoin also has much lower transaction fees. So what this does is it makes it easier for like day-to-day spending because the typical transaction is maybe around a penny. So it makes it a lot easier, especially when you're spending or buying small purchases and so forth. Litecoin also runs on its own blockchain, and it uses a different mining algorithm. Litecoin uses Script instead of Bitcoin's SHA-256. And this is important because it was designed this way specifically so that Litecoin is not really competing with Bitcoin in terms of hash rate. And one thing that's we recently did has been recently added to the Litecoin blockchain that I would say is not so subtle as a new privacy layer, which is an optional privacy layer on top of Litecoin that can be used when people would like a little bit more confidentiality in terms of their transactions.
Yeah, and talk more about that privacy layer. We don't have to go too far into the weeds, but
Sure.
explain that in a bit more detail.
Sure. So a while back, we on top of Litecoin, we launched Litecoin. What we call MWeb, which is an opt-in privacy layer that's on basically on top of Litecoin. And what this does is it provides users a very basic level of confidentiality concerning their finances. Uh, and what this does is essentially conceals the user, the person that's sending the receiving, I'm sorry, the user that's sending, the receiver, and the amount being sent. This is a very basic level of privacy, but this is something that we feel has been missing up until now with cryptocurrency that is offered in like traditional finance. For example, if you right now, if anybody knows, as you go, if you buy something with cash, well, the merchant doesn't know how much more cash might be in your pocket or is in your bank account. And it even the same when you use a credit card. If you buy something with a credit card, while there is a merchant in between you and the person you're buying, the person that's accepting your payment doesn't know anything more. All they need to know is that you have the money to pay. They don't know how much money is in your account. They don't know what's on your credit card balance. So these types of basic levels of privacy are already given in traditional finance, but up until now, because cryptocurrency, and I'll use Bitcoin for example, is on a public blockchain, it's easy to kind of follow these transactions, and that could be concerning in certain situations because you could basically, with certain tools, you can follow the money and see how much might be in a particular wallet and things like that. And by concealing these amounts, Litecoin does two things. Number one is it improves fungibility, and fungibility means that one Litecoin is always one Litecoin. Meaning, if you use a dollar, whatever dollar you use to buy, it should be equal to the same as any other dollar that you're using. For example, you shouldn't, nobody should not take this $1. That's been a little bit of an issue with cryptocurrency because if certain vendors or merchants or anybody else wants, they could trace these back, trace the history back, and they may decide that, oh, this particular coin came from something that was questionable. We don't want to accept it. That's not good for sound money. So this privacy layer adds fungibility, and it also helps protect and safeguard individuals, and businesses and their finances. And this, I think, is not something that we're really appreciating to the extent that I think we will be as we continue to use crypto for payments more. And more as things grow, people will, privacy will become, and it should always be important. And become.
So let me ask you this. If you were to just boil down Litecoin's value proposition and really the primary use cases there, just in hearing what you described, and we can put the privacy layer aside. I mean, is it really payments, medium of exchange? Is that the primary value prop?
Yeah, I think at its core, the value proposition is sound money. The reason that this privacy layer and web was added is because it was felt that was really the only thing that was missed, the only missing piece with sound money that even Bitcoin is not really providing at this moment. And with that, I think Litecoin arguably offers like perfect sound money, and because of that, it makes a great solution for payments worldwide. It's easy, it's quick, it's fast transactions. The payment amounts, the fees are very, very low. And so basically, and it's highly liquid, so it's easily accessible. So I would say two things. One is for payments, and because it's great for payments, it also by default is a very good store of value. And I think this is also an evidence by, if we look at some I'll just use one example, BitPay. BitPay is the largest payment transaction processor, transaction processor, I believe, in the world. Over the last year, if not longer, Litecoin has consistently been the number one most used cryptocurrency for payments on BitPay, even above Bitcoin, even above stable coins. And BitPay represents real payments, real payments for various things. And this has been, quite great to see because this shows the demand for Litecoin and its use for payments. It's also the number one cryptocurrency on BitPay for people that are holding on, like for payouts, for BitPay payouts. In other words, when a merchant uses BitPay, they can decide how they want to receive their money, and they can convert it or they can keep it. And the fact that Litecoin is also being kept more than any other cryptocurrency in terms of payouts also says a lot. So I think at its core, that the value proposition is payments, and this is something we continue as the Litecoin Foundation to push for in terms of payment adoption worldwide.
And just taking a step back, you mentioned Litecoin launching in 2011. What is the history of Litecoin? Like how and why was this born to begin with?
So yes, Litecoin launched in October 2011. It was created by Charlie Lee. He was an MIT graduate, former Google engineer. So Charlie was very involved in Bitcoin in the early days as well, and in fact, there's a lot he did for the benefit to help push Bitcoin adoption. If you go on to his X profile, I believe it's still his pinned tweet. He gives a whole history of what he's done. It's pretty incredible how involved he's been in terms of Bitcoin and Litecoin adoption. If you ask him, I think he'll say that he actually just created it for fun. I don't think he, at the time, ever expected it to be what it was. He launched it, but he did think about some things when he did launch it. One was using a different. One was being fairly launched because he felt, this was really important to be sound money, and just for any cryptocurrency project to right now we have a lot of projects. When I say fairly launched, we see a lot of projects where it's easy to kind of print money out of thin air, where creators will create a bunch of tokens for themselves and basically control, have the majority control of anything. Often they have the opportunity to then dump on retail, and that's not really healthy for anybody. So that was one thing. The other thing was Charlie created it with a different mining algorithm, and that's so that it would not compete with Bitcoin. And I think those two things have really helped in a huge way Litecoin adoption over the long term. But I don't think it was ever created necessarily. My take, at least from Charlie, is that I don't think he ever expected it to become what it is today. It was sort of an experiment, a fun thing, and yet it had all the attributes that make it really good, money. So.
Yeah, doesn't he refer to Litecoin as the digital silver to Bitcoin's gold?
Yeah, I think this. Yes, the silver to Bitcoin's gold, and I think that's still the case. Well, it is the case, and I think that's the reason being is it's an easy way to explain to somebody, especially somebody coming into the space, to really grasp sort of the very, very basic concept of that, because a lot of people understand gold, and it's easier to understand that comparison that way. It's often referred to as a light version of Bitcoin because it does have many of the same attributes, but because it's faster and it's less expensive to send, it really makes it ideal for payments, and it also, I would say, complements Bitcoin in many ways, right? Because it's healthy. They can push each other and grow. And there's been things that Litecoin has done that ultimately Bitcoin adopted, like SegWit and things like that. So I think there's a lot of benefits and a lot of synergy there as well.
I think you hit on a few of the reasons in what you just described there, but obviously Litecoin is approaching nearly 14 years of existence. Why has it had staying power, if you had to boil it down? Because you look, obviously a number of other coins have failed. So if you had to pinpoint why Litecoin hasn't failed and is still here and is succeeding, why is that?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. Number one is it's time tested. It's one of the oldest cryptocurrencies, and it's time tested. In fact, the network since 2011, since inception, has never gone down. In fact, it's the longest running uptime in all of crypto, and that's really important, right? Because we've seen a lot of either coins come and go or their network shut down when they're overloaded, and this gives people a lot of confidence in sending large amounts across the network. In fact, we've seen incredible growth in this in terms of like USD value being sent across the network. It's now in the over $1 billion a day being sent across the network there. I think the other thing is it was fairly launched. I think that really played an important role. It's also highly liquid, and it's across almost every exchange, so it's very easy to access, and I think that's been very important as well. And I also think the fact that it uses a different algorithm and is not competing with Bitcoin has also been kind of a big part of it. There's a lot of people in the space that are maybe focused on other things with crypto, or maybe they don't. They're looking at from NFTs to other types of DeFi and other types of projects. But there's also a core group of people that understand the value proposition of better money, needing better money today, and recognize Litecoin's traits and why it is. And I think I would just encourage anybody to use Litecoin and kind of see for yourself how quick and easy it is to use. And then one other thing I think is that it also, merge mining doesn't hurt either. It's been merge mined with Doge, and I think together there's some synergy there, and it also, added security there. So I think you have a combination of things there, and I think that combination continues to be the reason that we've seen, price aside, like so many other metrics show continued growth in so many areas, and have that power, staying power.
So looking ahead then, I mean, what do you see as the path forward for Litecoin? How do you continue to scale and grow from where you're at now?
Yeah, so I think our focus is to continue to push for adoption, and continue to position Litecoin as the best payments cryptocurrency or payment solution in the world. That would be the ultimate goal. One thing, though, I think we continue to do is we'd like to see MWeb, the privacy layer, continue to grow. And one way to do that is a push out to more mobile wallets to make it more accessible to people and easier to use. And that's happening. It's a slower rollout because it's still relatively new, but this privacy layer that Litecoin offers is being rolled out into various mobile wallets. The other thing is continued education and awareness, making it easy for people to learn about Litecoin, to participate. We put on events, a yearly Litecoin summit to kind of offer, the opportunity for people to come and learn more about Litecoin and adoption and everything else we could do in terms of that. So I think that we focus on its, the core value proposition of being the best money in the world, and then adoption and how we get more people to understand and be educated about that and continue to go. And I think we will see other experiments on top of Litecoin, which we're seeing. But if we can continue to grow the network, then that's that's kind of our key focus.
Any thoughts on how the current or future regulatory environment might help Litecoin? As I'm sure you're aware, obviously a lot is being made about the potential for a much more crypto-friendly administration. I'm assuming you view that as a positive for Litecoin moving forward?
I do. I mean, I think Litecoin, Litecoin was always, I believe, one of the few cryptocurrencies that it was probably, if we look at the previous administration, even with all the crackdowns on crypto, Litecoin, I think, always had a little bit more of a safer spot there, being that it was fairly launched, being that it was very similar to Bitcoin, being that there's no it's not controlled by any one entity. Like I mentioned, even the Litecoin Foundation, we don't control Litecoin. We're a nonprofit. Just like anybody else that supports the Litecoin network. So I think Litecoin was probably okay as it was, but certainly with the more crypto administration and regulatory environment, this should only help in terms of that. And I think, and I'm hoping that also helps in terms of really being able to do more with privacy. I think with Litecoin and just with cryptocurrency in general, with money in general, I think that's really important. And I think some people were concerned about pushing that too much with the previous administration, because even though it's very important, in a fundamental, human right, not everybody would necessarily see that and maybe question those things. So I think we have a little bit more, breathing room there, hopefully. to
You
push
hit on a
forward.
couple of things there that I think tee me up perfectly to ask you about this potential spot Litecoin ETF filing, or the filings out there, potential approval. And this filing's from Canary. And the feeling right now, Alan, is that this may have a real shot at approval, not only because of the shifting regulatory environment we were just talking about, but also to what you were hitting on, and that Litecoin does share some similarities to Bitcoin. And so the thought is it is a commodity. And of course, we already have spot Bitcoin ETFs. How big of a deal would an ETF be for Litecoin?
I think it would be good for adoption. First off, as the Litecoin Foundation, we'll always support and even fight for the right for self custody. That's number one. But it's also important to recognize that self custody solutions aren't for everyone, and that's for a variety of reasons. I mean, number one, a crypto ETF makes it a lot easier for some people to gain exposure through their regular brokerage accounts. It allows a lot of people to invest in like Litecoin without the hassle of using a cryptocurrency exchange or a wallet. And the fact is, for a lot of people, the idea of buying crypto directly, learning about self-custody solutions, is intimidating. It's scary. You hear a lot of stories about people losing their seed keys and other things. And I think that there's certainly it's certainly understandable. And there are people that will feel more comfortable just buying, say, through a brokerage. And the other thing is, you have like, there are, I believe, certain institutions that aren't even allowed to invest necessarily directly in crypto, so that allows for them. And then you also have a lot of things that like within retirement accounts where it's harder to buy crypto directly. It's not as easy. And through an IRA, that makes it a lot. Through an ETF, it'll make it a lot easier. And in fact, there's even some big tax advantages if you're like in a Roth IRA and you could buy. So if you're really bullish on, say, a Litecoin and you could buy in your Roth IRA, you could take advantage of a lot of those tax advantages. I also think an ETF really kind of gives some people some added credibility. It's funny, I had a couple people calling me and when Bitcoin ETF launched, and they didn't buy until then. They said, well, now that it's an ETF, I'm going to go ahead and buy spot Bitcoin. So it was, for some reason, it was that ETF that really gave them the feeling that, okay, this is legitimate, this is real. Again, this is a lot of people strongly feel you need to, you should hold your own coins, not your keys, not your coins. Completely understandable, but there's also there's certainly a market for everybody there, and the more adoption, the more people that can participate, the greater I think adoption will ultimately be. And as long as you have a choice, and you're not forced to use an ETF, and you can always self-custody, and I think that's important that we have those choices.
Yeah, I think you hit on many of the key points there. I've always thought of ETFs as really a bridge between TradFi and DeFi. And to what you're saying, if people want to self-custody, you can do that. The ETF's not preventing you from doing that. But I view it as a bridge because my hope is if people start getting comfortable with whatever the crypto asset is and learning about it, they'll ultimately move to a point where they are comfortable self-custodying, which I think, anybody who's in the crypto space, you would say longer term that, that's what the ethos is. It's moving away from TradFi, but I see ETFs as a bridge in helping accomplish that.
Absolutely. In fact, I even see where I have some friends that they start with buying a little bit of say a coin, and they generally will keep it on an exchange because, learning to send to a wallet or set up a wallet is another level of education. And so these are baby steps for a lot of people. And it's one step closer to giving people, that freedom and making the best decisions for themselves.
All right, just a few minutes left here.
Sure.
Yeah, I have to ask you about this Trumpcoin that launched on Friday. And before you answer that, I have to tell you that I actually sent out you may have seen this, I sent out a sarcastic post over the weekend about a Trumpcoin ETF. And actually, your creative director there at Litecoin, Robbie Coleman, he absolutely lit me up on X. I should have done a better job of making it clear I was being sarcastic. But Robbie's basic point, Alan, was that people should not be comparing Litecoin to something like this Trumpcoin. And across the crypto community, I'm sure you saw that this Trump coin launch, it was extremely polarizing. I'm just curious, how did you view this whole thing?
Um, yeah, it was a little bit, well, I would say surprising, but not. A little disappointing that, I mean, you know, to be nice about it. I mean, I don't understand what the reason was. I mean, I don't think that, the up and coming president needed the money. And and um, it is absolutely different than something like Litecoin or something like Bitcoin, right? This is something where again you can print a bunch of coins, you keep a certain amount for yourself, and I feel like this is just an attempt for a president and his team to, or a core group of people to line their own pockets, and of course the SEC probably won't do anything because who makes those decisions and where does that come from? And I feel like the concern is that you ultimately might hurt the very people that supported you. At the end of the day, I think it could end badly. I mean, it's not that you can't do it. The question is, should you? Sometimes it's not you can't do something, but the question is, should you do it? And especially coming from the to be president at the time, it was a bit surprising to say the least. And I just hope too many people don't get hurt, because I do know there's a lot of people that come into the space looking to make a quick buck and not really educating themselves. And some people will say, well, that's good for crypto because it gets more people into the space. But I would argue at the same time, not if people if that's their first experience and they lose everything. It's not necessarily a good thing. And I'm not sure how many new people really came into the space, because in order to buy the coin, you probably had to be within the space, to do so, because it happened so quickly. So, I probably have stronger words and I'm holding back, but it's it's why, why, yeah. Um,
Well, I did like the main or the post sent out by the main Litecoin handle, which was that you can fake community, you can fake hype, you can fake transactions, you can even fake trading and market value, but you can't fake reliability. And I'm assuming that was partially in response to, to something like the Trump meme coin. By the way, I don't know if you saw actually yesterday, believe it or not, an ETF issuer filed for a Trump coin
I did.
ETF, which is
I mean, I don't know. To me, that's kind of adding insult to injury. I don't understand the demand, and I don't understand institutional demand for Trump coin. I don't understand. But look, then again, there's been a lot of things that have surprised me in this space. Uh, but you have to understand. You have to. It depends on. I guess. I have to remind myself that people come into this space for different reasons. Not everybody necessarily cares about, like, say, sound money or things that can really change people's lives. But that's our focus, on things like that. These are the things to me that 20 years from now, 30 years from now, will be around and continue to thrive. Where these other things like Trump coins, I think will come and go much quicker. And unfortunately, a lot of people are going to get a lot more. Will get hurt along the way, I think.
Let me ask you this just before I let you go, and let's put the Trump coin aside. I'll tell you that as I become much more familiar with the crypto space and interacting with the crypto community overall, I've been somewhat surprised at the infighting. In other words, you'll have Bitcoin maxis tearing every other coin to shreds. You'll have Ether maxis shredding Solana. It seems like every coin is getting it from everywhere. And my thought is, doesn't a rising tide lift all boats? I just feel like if crypto wants to continue onboarding the mainstream, this infighting is a really bad look. I think it turns off the average person versus maybe just highlighting what you view as the benefits of your potential coin. It just seems like there's a lot of there's these pretty polarizing factions. I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on that before I let you go here.
Yeah, we see this. It is disappointing for the most part. I mean, it's again, it's the why. You could say there's a lot of reasons. Some people, when you are looking, obviously, to pump their own bags, and whatever's favorable to them, and doesn't matter. At what cost, it doesn't matter. But there's a lot of synergy and things that we can learn from each other. Litecoin, for example, leading the way with SegWit and doing some other things was very positive for Bitcoin. There's things that combined we can really kind of learn from each other and share and discuss. I mean, I think there is concern that there's a lot of scams out there, and some people are genuinely concerned and want to protect and and stuff like that. But there's a lot of maximalism out there that is so focused, so narrow-minded that's not really seeing the opportunity or bigger picture for a lot of reasons. And we. But in all fairness, the Litecoin community is, I don't see a lot of maximalism in the Litecoin community. I will say this, and I think that's great to see. Most Litecoin, the Litecoin supporters in general, they understand, and I think I really appreciate the idea of decentralization and what that means. And they're generally open to, fairly launched decentralized projects, beyond just Litecoin. At least the idea that if it's fairly launched, and there's it's if let the community kind of decide. The infighting is stupid for the most part. It's just dumb. I don't. We try not to. We get we hear about it all the time. People are very frustrated about the price too, and so they take it out on even the foundation because we're sort of a target. We don't control the price, but as Litecoin Foundation, I think it's an easy target to point the finger at. And and don't get me wrong, we're frustrated too. Many of our staff get paid in Litecoin, so we want more than anything to see the price succeed. But I think there's a lot of misplaced, anger and other things, and a lot of people looking out for themselves, and then there is probably some legitimate concerns too.
Well, hopefully this particular conversation, we can do a little bit just towards promoting education. I think that really helps, and just educating the mainstream on the different crypto assets out there. Really enjoyed the conversation, Alan. I'll be interested to see what happens with this ETF as well. But thank you for joining me.
You bet. Thanks, Nate. I appreciate you having me here.
That was Alan Austin, Managing Director of Litecoin Foundation. Hope everyone enjoyed this episode of Crypto Prime. As always, please leave a review or give us a like wherever you're listening or watching. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, we're available pretty much everywhere. So give us a like, and I'll see you again next week.
Crypto Prime is hosted by Nate Geraci, president of OTR Media LLC. Nate is also president of the investment advisory firm The ETF Store. While OTR Media LLC and the ETF Store are related by common ownership, they are separate and distinct entities, and anything discussed on this program should not be construed as an official statement by the ETF Store. This program is for informational purposes only and does not constitute investment advice. Investing in crypto assets involves substantial risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any past performance figures discussed are not necessarily indicative of future results. Visit CryptoPrimePodcast.com for more information.